I hope that everyone is doing well, especially in the wake of the senseless violence that I know so many of us are just absorbing, both of the MLK celebrations last week, as well as the more recent pieces of violence that we're all observing happening in California. I was hoping that this would be a time of the Lunar New Year starting and a time of joy, and it has impacted all of that. So many of you are on the front lines doing what you can to create beautiful work environments and be ambassadors for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And I'm always honored to be in your presence, continuing to push change together. With all of that, as we wind down season 3 of the pandemic, I want to thank all of you for carving out time from your very full schedules to join us for our Inspire Live series, where we bring experts together to talk about tips and strategies and kind of tackle the top business challenges of today. We'll be doing 4 of these this year. I know many of you catch our episodes whether it's, on your streaming platforms. You can always look for us as Inspired if you're looking at it on a podcast, or you can always look at past episodes on our site. I see a bunch of new folks who've joined us today. So for those of you who don't know us, Inspire HR advises business leaders and HR really feeling the pain from the rapid transformation of HR. And what we've discovered after 15 years is that much of the pain and that overwhelm, the big O as I call it, is that so many industries today are feeling that they're working so hard and that they're getting frustrated because they're applying their old systems to the new world of work that we're all together architecting. And those old systems just are not working. And that's where Inspire comes in. We introduce a strategic framework to really operationalize and transform organizations to be more fully modern. And we guide companies through that process. And we do it in 4 ways, always with a lens on inclusion: HR business partner, talent management, talent acquisition, and total rewards. And we're just finding that companies in these volatile times on a macro level with the economy are really just so valuing the advising and the fractional work that we can do. And top of the list for so many folks are the very topics that we're going to be tackling today, which is around recruiting and onboarding talent acquisition. So we are in good hands with our 3 folks on this all-star panel. Tom Conley, who is the CHRO at Kingsley Gate Partners; Shiloh Burchill, who's the Director of People Operations at Ad Council, a client that is near and dear to us; and the very fabulous Shatanice Reese, who's an Inspire expert on our team of 30 plus experts across 10 states. And Shatanice really specializes in talent acquisition and HR business partner work. So with that, let's get right to it. I'd love to really set the stage and just begin talking about the recruiting strategies that we formerly relied on that today are not so effective, and what strategies, just to bottom line it, are more tailored to this moment that we find ourselves in, January 23. Tom, you've seen it all, you've done it all. Let's kick it off with you. Oh, Tom, I think you're on mute.
You're right.
Sorry. Yeah, all the wisdom we want to hear. Go for it, Tom.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me kick this one off. Look, I think the biggest challenge that we see with our clients, and that I saw when I was a SHRO, and Kingsley Gate Partners is an executive search firm, but when I was in industry, sort of the round pegs, round holes strategy doesn't work anymore, right? That first, we did some research when I was SHRO at a biotech firm, and job specs had about a 6-month shelf life. So the job that you're hiring for today is not the thing that you're asking that person to do 6 months or a year from now. So resilience and adaptability are things that are embedded in all of that. And yet when we go to the market, we're still looking for people who look like the last person that we hired for the job if they were successful. So I think the first thing is that round pegs, round hole thing. We have to think about adjacencies and other skill sets that are modifiable and that we can bring them in, partly because things change and partly because there's just not enough out there. We're all facing talent shortages, so we've got to be more creative about this. I think the other thing is that traditional recruiting has sort of a capacity constraint. If we're going to be looking at adjacencies, the person that the Boolean search is going to bring up for you is not exactly the one that you might want, and you're
Mhm.
not going to be able to find them in your Rolodex because you weren't building the Rolodex with that adjacency in mind. So going after large groups of incumbents in jobs like solar and battery and mobile. We have a client that's self-driving cars. We need 2,000 software engineers. There
Ah,
aren't enough of those in the world.
right.
We have to
Literally.
think really creatively about where you're going to do this, and this is where I think we need to take a page out of like supply chain
Mhm.
and other technologies that we haven't thought about in recruiting. I read an article the other night that said recruiting was stuck in the middle. We're stuck between traditional recruiting
Hmm.
and recruitment. The problem is the article was written in 2003, and we're still stuck. So I think we need to kind of figure out how we come at this differently. But that's kind of my take on this one.
Yeah, I love just that visual of the solar powered cars and just the idea of looking for adjacent talent and kind of upskilling folks, whether it's, boot camps, whatever it takes to kind of create the talent. But as you said, there aren't enough humans on the planet that have that skill yet. So getting really creative. Shiloh, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, this definitely got me thinking about what we're doing here at the Ad Council, and we're really living what we preach. We're at this point we're championing skills-based hiring and have removed our degree requirements for most roles unless specialized like legal. And we do this because we understand that beyond it just being the right thing to do, it's also part of our diversity strategy. We know that many Black, Hispanic, and rural workers, as well as veterans, are STARS, which stands for Skilled Through Alternative Routes.
Hmm.
And these workers perhaps haven't had the access to obtain a bachelor's degree. And there's in fact 71 million STARS in the US. And
Hmm.
many of these jobs that require bachelor's degrees are essentially disqualifying 71 million skilled workers to
Hmm.
be considered for these positions. And so, kind of going off what Tom was saying, to address sort of that talent shortage, we're expanding our requirements to bring in skills-based workers beyond prioritizing a degree.
I love that. Talk about widening the aperture just to expand our thinking. I love that. And that, we always try to have folks who join us for these conversations leave with at least 3 takeaways. And I'm already making a note on my little sticky here, my little sticky note that's one for me. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the characteristics of what we call kind of talent-centric recruiting models compared to the historical company-centric models. I know at Inspire, we often are advising clients to really get laser focused on, moving towards more, specialization within talent segments and talent needs, not just being tied to the business need and like always bringing in the people all the analytics that go with it, believing, kind of what gets measured gets done. But those are some things that I'm just always thinking of as mindsets. But I'd love to hear from you. What are those characteristics, kind of that talent
Mhm.
centric recruiting model? Charlotte, can we kick off this one with you too? Because I just know that the Ad Council is doing some really innovative things.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to level set, a talent-centric recruiting model really prioritizes the candidate, whereas a company-centric model prioritizes the needs of an employer. Talent-centric is focused on building those relationships with candidates, while company-centric is focused on just filling the positions. It's funny though, sometimes recruiting can look a lot like dating. With a
Right on.
talent-centric approach,
Yes.
the company is it's essentially courting the candidate. We want
Yeah.
to make sure that their needs are met, that we're being transparent, that we're using clear communication and highlighting why the candidate should choose us. With a talent-centric approach, it's more of the mindset of like, why should we hire you? And the assumption is that the candidate is pining after the company and that the
Right.
company
Right.
isn't putting as much effort into that candidate experience. And a company-centric recruiting strategy can look like long and extensive application processes,
Hmm.
unclear next steps and expectations, and it can really ruin the organization's reputation in the
Hmm.
marketplace.
Hmm.
And a subpar candidate experience can make your prospective talent question if their needs will be met if they
Hmm.
were to work at an organization. But to that end, a talent-centric approach really could elevate your reputation and could be the deciding factor of if a candidate will choose your organization over a competitor. So again, it's really centralizing the needs of a candidate beyond just filling the role, but really building that relationship and nurturing that along their candidate journey or afterwards.
It's great. It's the old adage, right? Like you have a positive experience, you tell 3 people, you have a negative one, you tell 7 at
Mhm.
least, like within that day. So I think it's so smart to do. It really is about creating ambassadors for the brand also.
Mhm.
Shantanese, I know how passionate you are about this. I'd love to get your thoughts too.
Yeah, I absolutely resonate with what both Tom and Shiloh have shared. And shifting gears from what's important to us as a company to the candidate experience is absolutely important and critical. I know when Shiloh and I were working together on just reviewing the Ad Council's process, we looked at every single step and really asked the question, from various lens, not only from a candidate perspective, but also from a diversity perspective. Like, is this step the most efficient way to attract the talent, to get the talent in the door, to get the talent to meet the right people within the organization? If a company is, truly serious about, shifting gears from being a company focused to more of a client focused and having a really good candidate experience, they had to think through those things. The last thing I want to add, especially with Gen Z, entering in, they want speed.
Oh,
And
yes.
when their process, any process, if it's longer than like a couple of days, thumbs down, right? And, Jamie, to your point about, what do we tell people? Even if the entire experience was great, let there be one point of contention through that process. That's what, as human nature, that's what we, focus in on, like that, whatever didn't work well. Yeah, I waited for like a whole month. And, various organizations have to be sensitive to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I'd love to throw in a question that had come our way, which is kind of a follow-up that we hadn't gotten to yet. How does the ATS keyword screening fit into this modern recruitment model that we're all so furiously trying to build? Any thoughts on that?
Maybe I could jump in here. I think
Yeah,
that
please.
I think that's a prerequisite, right? And in that those keywords will only search the things that we've stuffed into our data sets already, right? So if they're not in there, you're not going to find them. And I think there's some incredibly effective marketing over the last 50 years by firms like mine. We've somehow stigmatized the active candidate, right? It's passive candidates who executive recruiters can only get access to for their clients. And so somehow that secret sauce is what sits here. We instead need to kind of embrace the wisdom of crowds, right? Build a huge haystack, have people pull themselves into the database by them deciding that they are the right person for that job. And then it's the recruiter's job to sift through the big haystack and find the needles. So I think that's a prerequisite to doing anything, is that we think about sourcing differently, and we've got to use sort of mass outreach to build us a larger haystack to sort through. Then keywords and Booleans, I think, have a place, but not until.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know what? There's been so much technology around just the potential bias that can happen when we're addicted to those, those keywords. And I know we're going to talk about that shortly. We'd love to get input from all of you. You're going to notice a poll pop up on your screen. I'd love to check in with everyone here on how your talent acquisition plans for this 2023 compare to 22. I know many HR leaders that we work with are experiencing some whiplash in this uncertain market, which makes it hard to plan. So we want to get a sense of where folks stand now. It was only 12 months ago that it was very much the Great Recession and the turnover tsunami that we were speaking about on the Inspire Live series. And here we are. So, okay, so it's interesting. So 30%, so it's a whole mix, right? Where 30% have slowed their hiring for 23, 27% feel that their TA goals for 23 are similar to last year, and 20% are hiring for more roles in 23 than they did in 22. I love just to hear that growth that is happening. Okay. So with that, with so much that is in flux, how can we plan for staffing needs? I mean, there is, does it even, I've heard some of our leaders say, doesn't even make sense. Does it even make sense to have a 23 recruiting plan, for example, or will that, quickly date itself? Shatanice, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I believe that having a recruiting plan is still essential. It's critical. As a business, being able to have those workforce development meetings with each of the teams and getting a sense of, what's coming down the pipeline in terms of work, and also where are we trying to go as a company. So while we may not need something right now, and if we're trying to be, very cutting edge, we have to plan for what we may need, a year, 5 years, 10 years from now.
Mhm,
And so it's important to, start developing those pipelines.
mhm.
I also want to offer that talent acquisition is not just simply for the TA team. It's responsible, everyone has that responsibility in terms of being that brand ambassador for the organization.
Mhm.
And really, wherever you are, on social media, LinkedIn, various groups, looking through the lens of your company, your employer, and thinking, could this person be not the best fit, but could this person be who we need on our team to get
Additive.
us to that next level? Yes. Can
Yes.
they add that value? And then just making sure that from a branding perspective, that employers, their brand, what's your story? What is it that you want anyone on the outside looking in? What do you want them to know and feel about your organization? But it also needs to be consistent. So when someone is coming in for
Mhm.
interviewing, what they read online is consistent to what they see, as they're walking the hallways, as they're talking to various people, and that it's a consistent brand. So those
Mhm.
are the things that I wanted to offer, Jamie, just in terms of the branding, making sure that everyone's a part of the talent acquisition process. And as I mentioned earlier, looking at each part of your process and seeing if there's opportunity for any enhancements.
It's great. I was just thinking as you were saying that, I fall in the camp of people who love to spend time in the winter cozying up with a book. And I'm in the middle of the fabulous Michelle Obama's The Light Within Us. And she talks about how very early in her career, she worked at a, very prestigious law firm. And she had heard that it was a place that was somewhat, family friendly, et cetera. And then when she was there, it did not match her expectations so much. And she found it really hard to do the juggle as she raised Sasha and Malia. So this is a story, I think, as old as time that, we do so much in the recruiting. Shiloh, back to your analogy with dating, it's all about, that recruiting and putting the best foot forward. But when folks get in, if they don't feel that sense of belonging from go in words and body language, it just doesn't match the message. Tom, any thoughts from you on that question, just about with all the flux?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's even more essential to have a plan now, right? They have to be guided missiles, not bullets. So too often companies get stuck with the plan in January. Oh, it didn't work because we didn't get there. But you have to have that starting point, and then you have to be able to pivot. I think what it means for the plan also is, however it's designed, usually it's not how many of these requisitions and how many of these people do we need, but curating the employer brand and being out there and making sure that the world knows who you are and staying
Mhm.
famous, even if you're
Mhm.
pulling your lens in a little bit. We all know this is a cycle, and
Mhm.
so don't pull back on sort of trumpeting what a great firm you are to work for, because when that turns around, you're just going to be behind the 8 ball. And I think that's
Mhm.
where planning is even more essential now when things are so uncertain. And the polls showed it, right? We had 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, roughly.
Right.
Everybody's
Right.
all three things are happening,
Yep.
and we need to get ready for that.
Yes, we are in a time for which there is no playbook, for
If I
sure.
may, too, just to
Please,
reinforce Shiloh's
please.
analogy, the most recent industrial psychologist we hired at our firm, we poached out of an online dating service. So the
Mm,
analogy is not lost on me. So
right on.
it works.
It's the same. It is a transferable skill set. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Let us know if you have an endorsement for that service. For those folks in the, the community who are just looking for endorsements of those things. Shiloh, any thoughts about just going in with a plan with so much influx in 23?
Yeah, I think what Tom is saying is exactly right. Staying flexible and having a plan, of course, will help you guide, what your goals could look like. But we can't always bank on things going exactly as planned. But I think some things that we can keep in mind though is, what hiring goals should stay fixed, like aiming on decreasing time of hire, for example, or increasing diversity hires, or making sure that candidate experience is positive. Those things we can control no matter how much hiring we're doing. So I think that's something that we can also always keep focused on, even when perhaps staffing needs are in flux.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears to pay transparency. We did a whole session on this, a whole panel on this last year here in New York. For those of you in the New York City community, a law went into effect in November of 22 that we were getting so many clients ready for. And it requires companies to include a salary range in their job listing. And similar regulations went into effect Jan 1 for both California and Washington states. So there's clearly a trend towards pay transparency, to the point of which we still get the actual newspaper hard copy delivered to us on the weekends. The New York Times Sunday business section had a whole section on how much do you make, and just that, how that dialogue is happening that very much hadn't in the past. So with that in mind, want to make sure that we're touching this. So many of our clients are just still navigating how to ready their organizations for these changes. So pay transparency, it kind of including this move, it's part of this movement, and it's a massive step towards from a DEI standpoint. But I'd love to talk about how it's affecting recruiting and what are kind of the pros and cons. Tom, if we can kick it off with you. Oh, you know what, Tom, you're just on mute. We're on
Sorry,
the
guys, I
edge
got
of our
a cold,
seats.
so every time I cough, I'm trying to.
Oh, no problem. I know
Sorry about
you're a little under the weather. Yeah, no, I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, I started my career as a comp guy. I spent the first half of my career doing that. And so I love this question. And I think there's so many things that we can unpack around this. We could just spend hours on this question. I think there's a macro and a micro challenge, right? The macro challenge is pay transparency has to be a thing that companies recognize, that the cruel economics of pay compression and inflation and product life cycles will put plenty of pressure on them just to remain viable. And one of the assets that they used to have was pay secrecy, that because of that, they could tolerate those things. And it was almost part of the business model. That's got to go away. So the macro challenge is that happening. To me, the solution for that macro challenge is you're always going to pay more for free agents, whether it's sports or business or anything else. You're always going to pay more for free agents than you are for the people who are on your team already. So maybe the first Easter egg I see here is maybe people will start curating the people they have as intensively as they curate their talent acquisition strategies, right? That the people you can keep are so much more economically viable than the people that you have to go play free agency with, that maybe it'll change that. The micro challenge is that we've got literally millions of managers that are uncomfortable talking about pay. And this has to sort of move from emotion to science, right? This has to be a thing where managers can develop a language that helps them express pay issues in ways that they can have a logical conversation. They can keep it away from the emotion of it, because the reality is pay differences aren't going to go away, but they have to be logically based, and we have to be able to rationalize them in a way that is not rationalizing, that it's objective and clear, and helps people understand that there are career trajectories, and those create, and skills differences and things that we should be differentiating on pay, and that they aren't being differentiated on the wrong things. And that's a conversation that I think most managers that I've worked with are just not quite ready to have. So I think the micro challenge for us is to figure out how to train them to have those conversations.
And we're seeing, as the Times reported, massive generational differences and the comfort as well. So we're seeing that kind of the newer generations, they're transparent about lots of things. So it's just kind of part of how they roll. Shatanice, any thoughts from you?
Yes, from a diversity perspective, I believe it certainly opens up the ability for candidates to really truly have a greater sense of what that role garners. And so they're, individuals are not going through the entire process and getting at the end of the process and then realizing, I was never, this was well outside of my interest, my pay range that I'm wanting to
Sure.
achieve. When Tom mentioned, we'll never get rid of pay differentials, my heart sank for just, a little, 2 seconds. But, to Tom's clarifying point, there are differences. There will always be differences. But for those differences where individuals have been making decisions and they should not have been using those characteristics, yes, we want those to completely disappear. When will that happen? That's a good question. But I'm also comforted by the knowledge that there are hiring managers and companies that do want to have, fair and equitable, recruiting practices. So fingers crossed, right?
Denise, you and I always talk about how we want there to be so much social change in our lifetime. And I'm going to add this to the long list of things, hopefully in our lifetime, we will see. We're going to focus in a moment on onboarding. So kind of we have the talent in the door. What's that onboarding experience like? But first, we want to get a quick pulse for everyone here. A poll's going to pop up. And if you could just take a moment about what your biggest challenges are around onboarding today. This is something we talk to clients about daily, especially with so many companies doing massive hiring when everyone was 100% remote and creating that sense of belonging, bringing folks in. What does it look like now as many organizations go to hybrid? So talk about another topic for which there is no playbook. Curious what folks are seeing there is the biggest challenges with onboarding once folks are in the door. Yeah, so it's a mix. So 47% say it's difficult aligning hiring managers around a consistent process. And establishing relationships, making introductions in a remote environment. And here and then third, highest on the rating here is inadequate HR staffing to keep up with the paperwork and the process. It's so interesting that 27% said it's about establishing those relationships. I think, as much as we've been able to accomplish in this virtual environment, and I'm so proud of us as humans that we have, there is nothing like sitting with someone and breaking bread and seeing them in 3D and seeing them from the shoulders down. And really making sure that they're brought into all the group dynamics. So I'd love to kind of compare and contrast onboarding in 23 with onboarding before 2020 and touch on some of what the major challenges are. So Shiloh, let's kick it off with you.
Yeah, first, I think what really hasn't changed is really how important the onboarding experience is to the longevity of a hire. But I think what the biggest differentiating factor is how we are engaging new hires. These days, onboarding needs to be an experience rather than a process. This is one of the first, major introductions that a hire is having to the organization. So we need to have a strong strategy and being able to maybe double down on how we invest in this process. Some things that we're doing at the Ad Council, what we've done at the Ad Council has been investing in modernizing our HRIS, as well as digitizing our onboarding paperwork. We make sure to send out company swag before the new hire starts to just give them that warm introduction and that kind of kick them off as brand ambassadors from the start. We're also developing a CEO welcome video to get that sort of welcome that a leadership would give you on your first day if you were in person. Additionally, we're putting more structure around a buddy program to make sure that our new hires have another casual connection outside of their daily teams.
That's great.
But from a team standpoint, we want there to be consistency. So our departments have each built out onboarding roadmaps that clearly show the new hire what to expect in their first 30, 60, 90 days. This also allows for the manager to track the new hire's progress and gives new hires an easy reference material so they kind of have that guide. We also have seen how important having a strong employee resource group strategy is in this remote world.
Mm,
Being able to find a community within the organization to really help a new hire to feel a deeper sense of belonging
mhm.
and help them to integrate better outside of their daily team. So overall, we really just want to be more intentional with how we're building connections across the organization and within teams and providing that positive experience, which, can be a really huge indicator of retention down the line.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love your list. It's like the best and brightest ideas of all the onboarding. I was laughing when you were talking about the swag. Of former colleague of mine was working at Twitter, and I was like, I gotta tell you, I mean, like we met, and she had like a fleece blanket and like a pillow, and there was swag on her bookshelf. She's like, literally, Jamie, every other week my doorbell rings and it's a new delivery. So that's probably a case in maybe too much swag, but there's definitely somewhere in the middle that we can all find.
Sure.
Shantanese, any other thoughts from you? Because I love your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, feedback is so important. So, connecting with those individuals who've gone through the process, a year ago, and also comparing to those who've recently gone through it. So to Shiloh's point, in terms of making sure you're looking at all different types of aspects of the onboarding process, but asking those people who just went through it, like what would have been more helpful? What did we do that really truly made you feel as if you were a part of the team? And as you think back, and when you first got started, what would have been even better, so that you would have felt connected, and taking that feedback and actually employing it. Also, as Shiloh stated, making them a part of the brand ambassador program, so that as new hires come in, they can serve as that connection to individuals who are coming in. And Shiloh, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had talked about they need to be here for a certain period of time, at least 6 months, a year, and then they could then turn around and serve in that capacity, in terms of when we were working together on your process. So
Mhm.
yeah, that feedback is really, really important.
Absolutely. I love the work that you all did together. It's just so helpful to just have that, everyone is nights and weekends, just very quickly trying to figure out what the TA process looks like in this time, what the onboarding process looks like in this time. And I think that we learned as much from the Ed Council as I hope they learned from us. I feel like everything that you do is always cutting edge and so innovative. We have a bunch of questions in that folks sent in both before our session as well as today. So I'm going to just go into this speed round here. If folks have other questions, please go ahead and pop them in the chat. So Tom, this one is specifically for you. Do you have advice on how we can get buy-in from our hiring managers for a more talent-centric approach? No pressure, but this one is specifically for you.
This is the question of the decade. Because it really is transforming hiring managers from why should I hire you, to having them be pitchmen and pitch women about this is why you want to work here. Once you've gotten that engagement and you get people who want to work, then you can still make the selection, but you have to build that cohort of people that you need to work with. And I think it just takes constant pressure on them and then results. If you can build this and just by demonstrating the results and the consequences of taking a different approach. One of the biggest challenges, and we use a platform now called HireLogic that listens to interviews of hiring managers, and we find that hiring managers, their skill sets are all over the map. So it's impossible to coach them because you're not sitting in, but HireLogic lets us coach the managers by not transcribing, but interpreting their interview questions against the job description and things like that, so that they begin to see where they actually are engaging a candidate because of the nature of the questions that they're asking. So we've found that there is some tech that can help. If you've got 20 people in TA, but you've got 4,000 managers that you somehow have to corral. It is a learning process, and it's one that's going to be, I think, multiple years to get large organizations to think about this.
I love that's such an innovative idea. So is it similar to, say, Otter where you can just say to the candidate, just so you know, I'll be recording this and it begins as soon as the interview kicks off?
Yeah, so it works exactly like that. I mean, we call
Okay.
it Gong for interviews. So Gong is a similar platform for
Uh-huh.
sales conversations.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of interprets how your pitch is going, and Higher Logic works in a very similar way.
What was the game show where people would get gonged if they were
Oh
booted
yeah,
off the
Dave
stage?
Barry's created that.
Yes.
The Gong Show.
Oh,
That was it?
thank you.
Yes.
Here we are, the Gong
How
Show.
innovative is
So
that?
that's so funny. I love that. I
Dating
love that.
yourself.
Then, and it's fascinating that it's like the technology is trying to quickly keep up with all the things that are unfolding. So is there like a summary, like an executive summary at the end where it's like, here are some
Yes.
tips on how you can do a more
Yes.
authentic, inclusive experience for
Yes.
the candidate. I love it. All right,
Also
great. Again.
generates questions so that they're not all asking the same 4 questions. You know, a candidate doing that candidate experience that Charlotte talked about can't be, 4 interviews that ask the same thing.
Okay.
And so being able to divvy it up and look at different, kind of really tease out what the strengths and weaknesses of a particular candidate are, and engage them by asking them interesting questions. Higher Logic helps us with kind of getting those questions organized for them.
Great. Again, I'm always looking for 3 things. So I'm going to put that here in my sticky note. Shiloh, Shatanice, I'd love for you to weigh in. And Shiloh, I was thinking specifically about STAR and, just hiring managers being open to different educational requirements. I'd love your thoughts too.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big proponent for it. We at the Ad Council, so we're a national nonprofit organization, but we operate very similarly to that of like a creative agency. And a lot of the skills that people bring, quite honestly, are learned on the job through internships, externships, fellowships, what have you, at least in the junior level positions. And this helps us open, like you mentioned, our aperture a lot wider. And we find value in bringing folks on who have the on-the-job skill sets rather than trying to find a needle in the haystack of someone at like an alumni association or connected with someone in a certain school, if you will. So I think we've found success in this approach, and we're hoping that this will kind of catch on with other organizations down the line too.
Oh, yes. Well, you have a whole group of people here that are hearing more about this, and I'm hoping that it catches on for their organizations too. Shatanice, any thoughts from you on this to get more buy-in from hiring managers? Yeah.
Really the WIFM, what's in it for me. So, being able to articulate, we want, this is what candidates are wanting. This is what they're experiencing. And so based on our process, and this is exactly, Shiloh, you certainly can chime in too, what we talked about with Ad Council, we said, our candidates are stating it's taking, way too long, to get through a process, for example. So we want to move as quickly as possible. And so in order to do that, we're making some changes in our process. And so we need you as the hiring managers to be able to, come on board with this. And let me tell you why. So if our process is taking longer than it should, we're going to lose out on, those candidates. That means you're doing your job as well as other, individuals' jobs on your team for a longer period of time. So we need to shorten our process so that we can get those candidates in faster. Therefore, you'll be able to get back to doing what you need to be doing as the leader of the team. So really being able to break that down and making sure that the employer, the candidates, the hiring manager specifically, they understand why we're making the change.
Why.
So what's in it for me?
With hashtag with for everything that works at home too, with raising children, the what's in it for me. All right. Next up, have you seen any successful cohort-based models that work when hiring remote employees? Shiloh, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, so in terms of cohort, as I'm kind of understanding the question, it's I think they're trying to define it as a group of new hires joining similar times.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
We don't have like a lot of new hires joining on a certain day, but we might have a lot of new hires joining within like a month of each other or so. And we want to make sure that they do have a little community of each other that they can, just relate to. And We also, as a remote first organization, want to make sure there are connection points that they can engage with throughout their time in their new hire stages. So we have put together department introductions where each cohort of new hires meets with the representative of each department, who kind of goes into a deeper dive about what they do and how those employees might, or new hires might work with them throughout their time. And this gives a shared experience for new hires to learn from this representative, but also gives each other the opportunity to understand how they might work together down the line as it relates to that department. It helps to build community, and it's a pretty low stakes process. It doesn't take much time for either party to engage in. It's a half-hour meeting, but the value and the impact
Huge.
can be huge. Exactly.
Amazing. It's like, boy, do we all want those things that are not a heavy lift, right? And have the 10x impact, like a 10x is 10 times the experience. It's great. I'm writing that one on my sticky note here. Also, Shatanice, thoughts from you on that?
I like the idea of a shared experience. And so, whenever something good or even something traumatic, that brings people together. So if you're able to, truly can make those connections, as Shiloh had, just shared, individuals are, hey, you were in my new employee orientation group, together. So, trying to find ways to have that shared experience so that they're going through that process together. So in addition to meeting with the department, certainly encourage, the new hire cohort to possibly meet together. So again, they're going through that new experience, collectively, at least for a period of time, so that they don't feel the only ones, or, maybe that first quarter, everyone who was hired in that first quarter, we'd love to celebrate you, welcome you, and say hello. And, oh, I didn't know that you were just, so again, any way to have that collective shared experience, thumbs up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just that sense of belonging. I think, like when you buy something at Target, say a shower curtain, like, that you can kind of return it for up to 90 days. Like in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, like, I think that when employees arrive, I think there's a period of time that they're still interviewing a little bit. I think that I think that they are still kind of sorting out that they made the right decision. No one talks about this, but I think on an unconscious level, it goes on for our candidate, and we have to double down those efforts, especially in these times where I think, we're just seeing, as we wind down season 3 of the pandemic, folks are just in general as humans missing that sense of belonging because of what we've gone through as a population. So I think it's more important than ever. Yeah.
Well, and Jamie, to go back on what you mentioned earlier about the book that you're reading, people are thinking about what they were sold, and so as they're in and living that experience, if what they were sold is completely different than what they're experiencing, you'll have individuals who are leaving within that, 30, 60, 90-day time frame. So that's why it's also important to make sure that there's a realistic job preview, whatever that word is.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So that everyone understands, like, this, I'm getting exactly what I'm supposed to be getting.
Exactly. So there was a question, what, no pressure, but what do you think are the most important skills to hire for in a talent acquisition role? What characteristics make a person and the team able to thrive in this environment? Yeah.
I'll take a stab at it
Please,
first, Jamie. As I saw the question in the chat, my thought was that anyone who's coming into TA new now really has to be willing to try new things. And, certainly there are some tried and true processes that we've done in the past, but it really is about, what can we do differently? How can we approach this? Innovate, and being able to be brave enough to offer those ideas. So someone who is that cliche of thinking outside of the box, definitely need someone who can come in and have those creative ideas and not be afraid to really offer those ideas to the team. That's one characteristic you've got to have in a TA person.
It's great. That growth mindset. Yeah. And if they could do the skill at a dating service, then maybe then maybe they could be an executive search person. Like, that type of mindset is going to stay with me. They are really adjacent skills that can be replicated elsewhere. Shiloh, any thoughts from you?
Absolutely. To build off of Shantanice, I think there also needs to be a level of clear communication and organization that every talent acquisition person needs to come in with. I know that, especially if you're juggling multiple roles with multiple candidates and you're really trying to have that talent-centric approach and make that candidate, each candidate feel like they are the only one, comes with a lot of juggling that you have to do and keeping track and being able to kind of refocus what each of those candidate needs are. So I've learned to really hone in on my organizational skills and proactive communication skills throughout my career. And I think that I continue to, and I think it's been beneficial for me and my relationships with my candidates.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah, I would add two things. Deep intellectual curiosity. Like we tell our new recruiters, you're going to get a master's degree every 8 weeks in something. Whatever that search is that they are on, they've got to go deep. And if they're not prepared to go deep, then they're not going to be a partner here. So that deep intellectual curiosity is one. And then I think the second is clock speed and velocity. Talent Boost, this logo over my head, it's a high velocity search platform and training platform that we built. And we hire, it uses a lot of process automation and AI and things like that. We hire out of Starbucks. We want people who are used to, I've got a couple, they were bartenders. That's where they started, and they're extraordinarily good at this because they've got those, they can communicate, they've got clock speed, and they're intellectually just deeply curious. And I think it speaks to that paper ceiling that Shiloh mentioned. This is a job that you can have the aptitude for, TA, that doesn't necessarily, if you have those attributes, you don't have to have proven them in university. You've got those attributes.
I love that. And it's back to the adjacent piece. It's like if you can bartend in a loud bar and get someone's order right, you can also deal with the overhead noise of the Frappuccino machine and how loud it is in a Starbucks, and also just have that attention to detail, stay calm, and navigate with a lot of distraction. Okay, so next up, are there any tech tools that you swear by for recruitment or onboarding?
I'm just gonna to what we've been using. We've been using Bamboo HR, which I find to be very user-friendly from a talent acquisition standpoint and as a people operations professional. And we've also been using Greenhouse as our applicant tracking system. We chose Greenhouse because it has inclusion tools built in, and we want to ensure that our hiring process is as unbiased as possible. And so it's also extremely user-friendly for both the talent acquisition standpoint and the hiring manager standpoint. And it's really allowed our hiring managers to have another level of investment into the process, which has been extremely valuable for my job as well. So I would recommend both of those if you're looking to up your tools.
Okay.
Yeah, Talent Boost uses about 55 different point solutions, right?
I was going to say.
It's got a whole bunch. So I think the ones that we find most useful that are more obscure are Appcast, for example, to do our mass outreach. So yes, there's Indeed, but if you really want to blast it out and really get out there, Appcast helps us a lot with that. So we rely on them a lot on that side. And then there's so much cool open source software. Talent Boost University is built on Moodle, and it gives us an ability to deliver like an orientation program, for example, pre-employment orientation program that's got video and everything in it that kind of really drives early engagement. So there's that. And then I mentioned HireLogic, which we're finding is very helpful.
I'm curious about on the onboarding. It's like, so T minus 30 days to start date, the video messages come, the swag starts, like, what does it involve?
Yeah, I mean, cynically we say those are the only 2 weeks in someone's life that they're willing to work for free. So capitalize on that, right? They want to be part of the new team. So we storyboard and produce day in the life videos for trainees, and then for when they're on the job, we really try to engage them early. And this is how your supervisor is going to behave in a call center, for example. And it's not because they're mean, it's because there's a lot of pressure to deliver to someone who is concerned, stressed out, that customer who needs
Mhm.
help. So we find those messages, and then we're able to begin dripping them in over the course of, and then mix it in with merch, figure out how to mix the family in, figure out how
Mhm.
to kind of really showcase the benefits package and bring everybody in the household into this new journey that somebody's beginning to embark on. And because they're not on the inside yet, Talent Boost University and things like it are able to do it with their personal email address and set them up as an enrollment. And there's no, they haven't stepped over the wall and become an insider yet, but
Mhm.
we're getting them ready to do that.
Mhm.
And so far it's working well.
It's great. It reminds me, we have a son and a daughter who are both seniors applying to colleges, 12 each. And while they're waiting to hear, we are literally getting like newsletters, while you're waiting, here's a video of a day in the life on the campus. So I think that they're using similar strategies because it's an onboarding process there too. It's so interesting the way that this type of building relationships digitally is just kind of permeated into all areas of our lives. We've two more kind of expertise questions, but I wanted to also get from each of you what you are personally doing for self-care during this time. This is the final question that we ask for all of our Inspire Live series. We are self-care obsessed here at Inspire. It's so important that the HR and business community is taking a moment to just tend to self so that we can do the really important work that we each wake up and do daily. So Shiloh, let's start with you.
Well, I've really been honing in on my culinary skills. I've been really trying to bake more, cook more, make craft cocktails from home.
Nice.
It allows me to be creative, but also still have some structure into what I'm doing. And I love structure, but I also like being able to kind of go outside the lines a little bit. So that allows me to just kind of remove what's the noise from the world and just focus on what I'm doing. And it also gets me to feed the people that I love, or toast with them, and it brings us together, but also gives me time to myself as well.
I
So I
love
love
it.
that. And if your employer offers mental health resources, I definitely advocate for utilizing them however you'd like. I know for me, it's been beneficial to have some time for myself, to talk with someone as I need it. So big proponent for therapy too.
It's great. All good ideas. Shatanice, what are you doing these days?
Yes, self-care is extremely important to me as well. And I had a colleague last year, I saw a post where she stated, she takes a Friday once a month and just shuts down her entire company. And so I said, what would that look like? And as of the latter part of last year, one Friday every month, I shut it down. I shut my laptop down. So as a consultant, as a business owner, that's huge. And I do things such as, go to get a massage, or I go to get my toes done, or I take a nap. Whatever I need to do to take care of myself for that time frame, I do it. And I do it on a Friday when the kids are in school and therefore not, at the house and needing my attention. And it's been wonderful. And so I look forward to those days each month. And I selected the middle of the month. So because my thought was, okay, you've made it through the middle of the month. Let's pause, get refreshed, and make it through the rest of the month. So I'm so excited to be able to do that once a month. And of course I do other things, but for that day, no business stuff. So
this is going to be one of my all-time favorite ideas ever. I love it. Okay, Tom, I know we're saving the best for last. What are you doing these days for self-care?
Mine are a little weird, so I apologize in advance. First, the way I got to Kingsley Gate Partners is I sold them Talent Boost. So that was sort of validating 7 years of hard work. And Talent Boost made its name building pandemic response organizations. We hired and trained about 24,000 people for contact tracing and case investigation, things like that. And then the Great Recession came, and then we sold it to Kingsley Gate Partners. So that's how I got here. And that's been invigorating, actually. Just it validated the effort, and that's been invigorating. So I'm having fun again.
I love it.
I think, second, I'm finishing my dissertation, which I know sounds really weird, but 40 years since the first attempt. I'm finishing it up, and we built Talent Boost around the principles I'm using in my dissertation.
Huh.
So I'm having fun with that. And then like Shiloh, I've always wanted to do this. I'm doing a Julie and Julia thing, where I got Julia Child's cookbooks for Christmas, and one a week. And I'm having a blast with that. So that's those are my three.
I love it. Can I ask, what is your dissertation on?
Oh, it actually is about disintermediating recruiters and traditional sourcing, and using metacognitive learning to train managers on how to get over affirmative action stigma. I know that's a mouthful, but basically, how do we make recruiters as gatekeepers to career equity, make them allies and not structural barriers?
Well,
And I'm having fun with that. It's really a lot of fun.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I've learned from each of you. Thank you for sharing. Again, spread the word, self-care. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. So make sure that you're taking care of self so we can do this important work each day for our homes and clearly for our communities. This brings us to the top of the hour. I could literally talk to y'all all day, but thank you so much. Tom, Shatanice, Shiloh, you are all just each a treasure, and this conversation was so rich. So thank you. For those of you who've joined us, thank you. Stay well, take good care of yourselves, and you can always catch this on our Inspired podcast. And of course, we'll send an email with this great recording so folks have it. Take good care, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.